Welcome to Misfit Union. Today I'll show you how I converted a rusty door skin to a solid one. I'll show you how I made a template. And show you how I replaced the rusty pieces with good steel. You can see it's pretty rusty. It's not the worst, but it's not the best either. The thing I learned from Trev's blog is before you make any cuts on the destination metal, you gotta make sure that you make a template first.
Jumped up, quarter flying, mid-air-nated.
Sounds about right.
No wonder he got the shits the other day.
The thing I've found with all kinds of rust I've cut out on all sorts of projects is it's always a lot lighter on the top, and as you start digging you start seeing how much worse it is underneath. I mean, this is a door with a few rust bubbles on the outside and it looked a bit bad, but not this bad. What I think I'll do is make the shape off this, use that as my template, because this one doesn't exist anymore. So I've got my original template piece of metal here, holding it down so hopefully it doesn't move too much. From this, you can use the scribe and scribe up what we can see of this original inner door skin. I think what we should do is just maybe cut another piece of this and start molding it to fit. So I started off on a path thinking I'm some sort of mathematical genius and coming up with a whole bunch of formulas, as you can see here. And this is how I measure this up, and this is how this works. This is exactly how a circle works, and here's another half circle. So I decided to go simple and create some cardboard templates. Obviously we have one corner that actually is there, and the other corner we have to make up. So I went from the cardboard templates onto a piece of wood because it's easy to cut and have a play. Say hello to Zeppelin. He's hanging out, eating all my things. Thanks, Zeppelin. So we've got this piece that sits in here. So what I will do is cut out this once I'm happy with whatever I'm cutting. And then this will be the template for what I cut out my metal piece for. As you can see, if we go around the back of here, you can kind of see how the template worked. I don't think Zeppelin was very impressed. So I'm pretty happy with this. Hopefully this is going to fill in this space. So I was watching Fitzee's Fabrications this morning on YouTube, and the best thing about that guy, apart from everything that he teaches you, is he teaches you how to do it with just tools you've got. at home. So the thing I was trying to figure out how to make is, you know, like basically do a bead roll along a piece of metal. And he shows on his channel that you can basically put it in a vise, lock it in, and then grab a piece of kind of like a worn chisel. I didn't have a chisel, don't know why I don't have one, but I ended up kind of half sharpening my file, and then that kind of gives me a bit of offset so I can choose one high or low side. And then you basically come along here and punch it into the metal. For corners, you'll notice that I had problems with this one because it's quite, well, it's a flat piece of metal. So there's no, when I'm punching it, you can't really make much of a turn. So another random tool that I have, I'm not sure what it's for, but I like it. And I ground that off so I've got a bit of a curve going on there. And now that curve enables me to kind of put nice shapes into here. So it kind of allows me to do that in about 4 hits. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like a nice tight curve. Now, it doesn't give heaps of depth, but it does give a bit more shape to the panel and I think a bit of rigidity. That looks like it turned out okay. Let's try it on the panel. Well, on my minus, if you can see what I've done wrong is I popped it out this way and it's supposed to go the other way. That's what happens when you work out the project multiple days. Other thing I noticed as well, and also on Fitzee's videos, always make your piece bigger than you need it. This one was perfect sizing, edge to edge here. After doing that work, popping it out, has actually made it maybe about a mil. It's actually compressed it about a mil there. Do all of your shaping, make everything a little bit bigger than needed, and then cut it right at the end before you weld. So I'm now going to make it in 3 pieces. One piece being here, one piece along here, and the third piece down the other end. I put a use this side because I keep doing the wrong side. See? Very easy to mistake it. I was gonna hit that and make the shape there. I don't actually need to because all I need to do is cut this to the shape, as that is now, the whole area is now recessed, so it should be okay. I don't know about you, but I always have heaps of lines on all my drawings, and then I put an arrow on them just like this, so I know which line to cut. Grabbing our original template, looks like that fits on nicely, and once everything's done we can just cut this off to make it a nice edge. The press looks good. I've welded a few spots in, as you might have seen. I've got more welding to do on that and cleaning and tidying. So I made another mistake, trusting my cardboard template, this one here, and I made the mistake of cutting it too early, thinking that was the actual bottom. I'll weld up a little patch in here, get that looking nice. I'll make it too big this time. Welded the extra piece on, welded on this side, actually shows up through the other side. I'll clean it up a little bit with the grinder, but we take this piece here, I can draw my new lines here. See here, it could be interesting, like that's the original line which I'll replace soon.
That will probably sit up a bit, but when you have it sitting up a bit, it looks like there's a bit of a weird gap there. This is the base though, so we'll be folding metal around it. As you can see, it's pretty bad. Couldn't see it through here. It's not very tasty. Looks alright. On here, I'm going to bend this up, so mark the other side, because it'll be pushing down, which creates the up. Thinking about this now, I really should have bent it up against the slat edge. In fact, I could do that now. Okay. Glad I put those there. Good little reference marks. Whacker. Been watching Fitzee's fabrications on how to do a lower door skin, which you'd think I would have watched before I started this, but hey, that's alright. One main important thing he said was actually keeping these hinges on the door itself. When you're fitting this, don't have the latch on the door, and when you're putting the door on, put it as high as possible. It's a bit harder to lift the door up gently. You can let gravity lower the door gently. If you have a look at the door line that I had planned on cutting, that would be this one here. It's quite a harsh cut actually. It ends up being quite a weird angle, but I'll triple check that before I do it because it seems a bit brutal. But when you take the piece that was originally there, I think it's this one. Sure enough, that's where the line was. Obviously tidy up here, but according to Fitzee, make everything a little bit too big because you can always cut it down, but it takes so much longer to make it bigger again. Good to see the welds have penetrated. Fitzee welded up his on here on the inside as well, which gives it a bit more strength for when you go to dress the outside. Otherwise it's looking alright. I think the only thing I'm a little bit disappointed with is me folding this. It's quite a soft edge, whereas you want like a hard edge here.
Zeppelin, come on. Yep, you're not allowed on cars. Off. Come on, off. Yeah, cool. Yeah, I thought so. No. Oh, God. This is how old parts break. Wait, off. It's probably a bit overkill, but what is? Let's have a go. So, use this as a straight edge. It'll also be my cutting tool. I've been loving this. I haven't had to buy heaps of cutting discs since. Been great. Oops. Does actually have a rotation way. It didn't seem to scuff the actual steel bar too badly, which is nice. I think that's going to be a great sacrificial bar. Pretty happy with this. So I'd give a bit of reference. That door lock should be quite low rather than quite high. I feel like that gap looks okay. Putting in the original piece, it looks like I haven't destroyed it too badly. What I'm going to do is fold this side and the bottom side first. Then we can lock it up here and then I can see if this fold line on the far end is in the right spot. Look how it's carried on with this curve. So that'll be interesting when we get to fit it. So we've got a flat edge here, flat here, edge here. So fitting this up. Just used this double thickness ruler to create my pre-folded edge. Came up quite nice. It's just the test piece. It sits on nice too. Plan was to use this around this, which is actually slightly thicker, but at least it's longer. So that'll be a nice little guide in here if it stays flat enough. Moment of truth, I suppose. Oh, definitely need a bit of love, maybe. I still need to trim this piece in here, so it will actually sit a bit more flush than that. Thank goodness I've still got some trim left to go. That kind of sits up nice. My concern is when welding it, if I'll be able to keep these all nice together. As you can see, I'm glad I didn't fold all edges at once, because it looks like
We could probably fold that a bit earlier. These pieces have come in so handy. Hold on to them to the end of the project. I'm kind of a hoarder, but not really. I'll throw these out at the end. But that'll give me a guideline on where I need to put the Sharpie. Got a magnet here to hold it up, otherwise, as you can see, it sinks down. See that this whole piece needs lifting. It's just not flat, it kind of slopes down this way. In a way it kind of helps drain with the doors, but I think it also kind of ruins our alignment gap. We'll try bring that back up, some of these.
I wonder how many people will spit out their Saturday morning coffee when they see me do this.
Gonna grind this back a bit so I've got a good surface to weld to. Then we're gonna clean up inside here. Folded it just in the right place, hopefully. Thing I need to do is just trim that piece off there as it's felling. Not the prettiest ends, but hey, for a first timer, not too bad. That one looks really off, but hey, it's okay. I'll round it off. And tap that up a little bit more, which will bring this lower part up. I think what I'll do is I'll just curve this off once I've welded the top panel in. I'll recheck on the car, of course. I'm not going to try and fold this and give it a curve. What I'll do is I'll tack along every 5 centimeters and see if it does pull the panel in a bad way. The door's obviously not closing properly because it's got no latch to latch onto, but I think that looks okay. And of course that's going to get a round off as well, so just has a bit more of a curve. I've sprayed in here, some zinc it. Also did a little bit up in here. Just a bit of this to help seal up anything that potentially could rust in the future. So I've done it along the seam of where I welded it. I didn't clean up too much because I still wanted the strength to stay in there. That's my excuse. I think this is how you do it. I never actually see people do the full process. So let's find out. I'm about to find out if this gap will close itself. But that's pretty nice. I've noticed that the older I get, the more I make noises, but I don't actually need to make the noises, I just make them. So you'll see some of the welds end up nice, and others, absolute shocker. It is at least lining up okay. As you can see, the welds are blowing through big time. I've got to take my time because I don't want it to warp. It currently looks pretty good. A bit of time going over this, touching it in between each weld, as you might have seen. Depends on if I was recording or not. It's not super pretty. I don't think there's too much in the way of warping. Maybe a little bit in there if you have a look. If we have a look on the panel here, it seems okay. Not bad for a first attempt.
try and give you a better view of it. I feel like this one was less likely to warp, this one's more likely because it's thinner metal. I'm going to give it a grind down, but before I do that, shine a light from behind to see if I've missed any spots. I have to take my time with grinding as well because again the heat will distort the panel, so there'll definitely be a few spots that I'll discover when cleaning it up. Now before I take off any more, making sure it's not getting too hot. I did get a little bit too hot just down here. Oops. Just checking again for holes, because now's the good time to weld them up while there's still a bit of fat on there. Well, I've tightened it up a lot. As you can see, there's still a few little holes, which that's a pretty big one. Bit nervous about welding into these, could just create more holes for myself. Feels pretty good. Of course the light's going to make it look crazy, but I don't think I warped it. Maybe a bit of warping in here. Not like the whole panel's warped, which is good. I'm happy with that. The main thing I want to finish off with this door before fully treating it is need to get the hammer and dolly around here to properly flatten the edge. So it's far from perfect, especially because I didn't actually put much of a curve in. Well, I didn't put any of a curve here, it's just a flat panel, which I don't think they ever are a flat panel, to be honest. And it still looks okay from afar. The next thing I really want to find out is what do people do with the other side of this. But my plan is just to clean it up with a wire brush and put some seam sealer on it. Or do I go etch primer and then seam sealer? Okay, so my solution I've come up with from what I have on the shelf is CRC rust converter liquid. So I've put that in here. I've brushed that on along the seam. Beautiful shot, this. Next step, we'll brush this on and then we'll get that also into the far corners if I can twist my arm. I sanded the panel down with 80 grit and I should have actually used 240. I then used 120 grit and I still should have been not that low on the grit scale. I then cleaned up the metal part of it with some degreaser and then the painting, well, the painted part of it with some water and a cloth. I've put some etch primer on, mainly around the metal area here, the CRC etch it. I saw on someone else's video that they were using some glass for putting the putty onto. I think that was a good idea because it's quite easy to clean glass, especially with like a scraper. This is the part where I'm not sure if you're supposed to sand it each time and then apply filler or just apply filler onto filler. Oof, that got destroyed, didn't it? Then I sanded it smooth with 120 grit sandpaper, but I should have been using 240. I used a different etch primer for this stage just because I ran out of my favourite. Shouldn't have done it next to those brand new white sheets. Oh well. As you can see here down the bottom, I've put seam sealer along the folded edge. I used a brush on type seam sealer, which I'm not the best at applying, but yeah, it'll do the job, but maybe it's not as pretty as it could be. Then another quick sand down with 120 grit, I think, just to get it ready to receive some paint. Wax and grease remover up next. This will tidy up everything I've just sanded down and get it all ready for paint. I did apply this wax and grease remover to the seam sealer I've previously put on. I'm not sure if I was supposed to or not. I guess we'll find out if it reacts. High build primer up next. I'm using the Linda Mixed It Super Cheap Color Match base coat. The next day was super sunny, so I decided to do the other side outside, but I do not recommend this as so many things ended up landing on the paint. It's at this point that I realized that if you can see imperfections at the body working sanding phase, then you'll see them for the rest of the project. I actually went back and redid all the sanding, redid all the painting, and got some better lines, as can be seen here. Lastly, the clear coat. Put this on in about 3 different layers, overlapping. What I realized when putting this clear coat on is I should have sanded it back as per instructions to 600 or 800 grit before doing the clear coat. And I didn't, not this time, but on the second time round from that picture I showed just before, I did do that. I'll link in the description all of the YouTube channels that I've referenced on this vid and given me a lot of insight, and also recommend an album that you can listen to, the Viagra Boys Welfare Jazz. That's been probably one of my favorite albums of the last 2 years. Check it out. I'll leave you with a picture of Sebastian Murphy from the Viagra Boys on fire riding a scooter, and if you liked what you're watching, please, you know what to do.